What's up guys, Nick here, and today we'll be tying Microstreamers. So the fly we're going to be tying today is this little Jig Leech here. These are as micro of a streamer as I will throw. I've seen some streamers that are even smaller than this, but this is pretty much as small as I will go when it goes in the streamer world. If you've seen my channel before, you know I'm usually throwing these big streamers for pike like this, big bass streamers, crayfish. So to me, these little leeches are a micro streamer. But the thing that's really great about these is that they are extremely versatile in how you can fish. You can throw them on a nymph rig to help get your nymphs down. You can fish them just like a streamer, just like you would on your streamer rod with sinking line. There's so many different ways to do this, and I love how simple and easy it is to tie. So let's get into it. All right, so I'll go over a couple of the materials here. It's a pretty short list. We're going to be starting with a size 8 Firehole barbless hook, barbless jig hook. I love these Firehole hooks. These are great. You don't have to worry about breaking the barb, and the way they designed them is the hook point kind of goes towards the hook shank, so you get a little bit more bend in that hook, and it just holds onto the fish a little bit better than, say, if you were to bend a barb on a standard hook. They really put a lot of effort in the design of this hook, and it's great. Next is going to be this. It's a 3.2 millimeter tungsten bead. That's going to be at the head of the hook here. I'll show you how I put that on. Then we're going to go with a Zonker Strip. And the way I do these is I'll do about 2.5 times the length of the hook shank to give you a nice little tail there. Then we're going to use some Flashabou for the body. We leave the hook shank exposed there because you want that nice flash to pop out. We're going to wrap this around, and I go with the extra strength Flashabou. I don't know if it really matters. You could probably use regular, the standard Flashabou, but I just like the extra strength because I use them for my big streamers, so I have that ready for me. And I'm going to go with this orange thread because when I finish it, you'll be able to see the thread behind the bead. So I think that'll be a cool little contrast between the orange and the dark olive rabbit strip. But this is the Uni-Thread 136D 6/0. So that's a pretty small, light thread. You want to stick to the lighter thread when you're tying these small flies so that you don't overcrowd the bead, you don't overcrowd your hook eye or anything like that. Let's put the bead on first. That'll be the first step. So you want to find the smaller hole on the bead, and that's what you're gonna feed your hook through. See where there you go. And you want the smaller end to be facing the hook eye so it doesn't slide up. And the cool thing about this little bead is it has a slot, if you can see on the back there, and that helps you kind of build up you can build up the thread down behind it or build up material so that it locks it in place. All right, and then we're just going to start the thread right behind the bead. And then just keep going around until the bead stops turning, or that at least to where it stops moving right there. If you saw that kind of locked in there, and shift it around. And do the same thing again. Make sure it's locked in. There we go. You don't want to do too many turns right behind the bead in the beginning because you don't want to overcrowd it. You want to have a nice clean finish after you tie all your materials in. But I like to build up a nice thread down all the way up to the bend of the hook and even up a little bit, because this is going to be exactly where my thread is where I'm going to lay all the Flashabou. I'm going to wrap that around the hook. Just give this a nice wrap around so that Flashabou has something to grab onto. And I like for it to come all the way up on to the hook bend here. Usually you see Some of the flies will be stopped right here, just right at the flat part of the hook shank. But I like to come up to the bend. It just gives it a little more of a like a wormy look, I guess, more buggy. Just to add a little extra pop into it. So it's really just a preference. And so I'm going to grab the Flashabou now, and I'll grab 3 strands since I'm using the extra strength. This stuff's a lot thicker. You don't need too much. But I'll just trim off a few strands. Tie that in right here. And come all the way up. And we're going to wrap the Flashabou to about right there. You don't want it right up to the bead because you want to leave yourself a little bit of room behind the bead. This is where we're going to lock the Zonker Strip in, and then we're going to add the rest of the materials. But here we're just going to wrap it. Wrap it around and work our way to the bead. So right about there is where you want to stop. And then just take a look at the hook. Make sure it's completely covered with the flash. That looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to lock that in right there. You kind of just intertwine your thread and the end of your flash there. Lock it in. Trim that up. Just lock in those tag ends. You can wrap back a little bit over where the flash is there. Give yourself some space for the Zonker Strip. That looks good. So for here, the hair is going to face the hook shank. Normally, you would lock with the Zonker Strips. When you're tying the Zonker Strip streamer, you would tie the hide against the hook shank. But for this, we're going to be tying the hair against the hook shank. And however you like it. Sometimes I like to tie these extra long. Sometimes I tie them short. I'll just tie this one, like I said, about two and a half times the length of the hook shank here. This way, if you want to trim out, you can trim off the tail as much as you want. Play around with the length. But I'll pick right there. It looks pretty good. So I'll pull that hair back just like that, so you have a nice transition. And I'll trim it right there. Turn that a little bit. And then what I'll do is I'll just pinch it from underneath with my left hand, and then just kind of wrap your thread wraps lightly a couple times, and you can cinch it down. Help keep that level right there. Just remember you want that hide facing down, because when this hide absorbs water, I think that adds to the weight of the fly, and then that's what helps keep the hook from turning over. Just like to make sure I hold it with my thumb and lock it in. I kind of left too long of a tag end on this, so I gotta trim that off. There we go. Just lock that in a little bit more. Pull those the fibers back from the bead. Keep it nice and clear. Come back to where we started. And now we're gonna grab the Zonker Strip again. But this time we're gonna leave the hide out of it. We're just gonna grab the hair. Grab a nice clump of hair. Try to keep it as long as you can and then just trim that off from the hide. So now you got a nice bunch. We're going to do the same thing. We're just going to keep it underneath the fly. And actually, what you can do is turn this over so that you can see the bottom of the fly here. And then just place those fibers, kind of spread them around. This way they blend in nicely with the rest of the hair on the strip. And hold it down with your left hand. Do some light wraps, and then you can lock that hair in right there. Make sure it's nice and spread out. So we're going to build up a nice little belly with the hair here. And then with these tag ends, we'll just fold them back. Just fold them back over the long ends. Let's see, there we go. Just pinch them down and lock them in. So we're going to take another bunch here. I like to try to take up a little bit more than the first bunch. Trim that off. Same thing. Lay the long fibers towards your strip. Spread them around before you start looping the thread on there. Hold it with your left hand. Light wraps. Pinch that down. Make sure it's lined up correctly before you really cinch that down. And then you can lock it in. Same thing, we're just going to fold these fibers back on themselves. Start wrapping behind the bead. And what I'll do here is take your bodkin and kind of comb through the hairs so it blends it all in. Takes out any loose fibers that you don't need in there. Let's see how that looks. That looks pretty good. Now you can see the top of the fly, you want to keep it, you want to keep that flash exposed. That's what makes that pop out. And then we've actually got some more room under here. I could probably tie one more bunch of fibers right behind the thread there. Or right behind the bead, sorry. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to take one more bunch. Just to finish it off. I'll put that right behind the bead. Spread that hair around. Lock it in. Fold those tag ends back and we're ready to finish it off. Now when you get ready to finish the fly and do your whip finish, you just want to look at the top. Make sure that there's a nice thread dam right behind your bead so that's locked in, has a nice transition. I think this is just more of my perfectionist thing. You don't have to do this, but I just like to do this to make the fly look really nice and be ready to lay some glue on it. Pull it tight. That's it right there. I like to do these half hitch finishes. Secretly, I never learned how to whip finish, so these are a little bit easier for me. Just twist the line on itself, do a half hitch, and loop it around and lock it in. Do this a few times. I always say whip finish, but I truthfully never whip finish my flies. That's okay though. So I'm going to come in with the UV resin and cover those thread wraps. I'll comb through this hair a little bit more just to make sure it's got a nice bulky belly. There's no loose fibers there. And that's it. I'll just finish off the threads right here with some UV resin, make sure it's nice and solid. So there you have the Jig Leech. Really easy to tie, super effective for a lot of different fish. Give it a try. Hopefully you guys are able to tie this and get it out there and fish it. But thank you guys for watching. Appreciate you tuning in, and stay tuned for the next one.